Hey, everybody. Welcome to our Roundtable podcast, the show where we talk about what we want, when we want. Nathan, Jake, and Ben coming to you from Top Secret Studio C. We've officially moved out of the dank, dark hole.
Top Secret Studio B.
That was Top Secret Studio B. It was too top secret. But we are here podcasting for you. What do you guys want to talk about?
I don't have anything to talk about today.
Okay.
A bunch of at least little things to talk about today.
All right. Let's hear them.
Boom. I finished Pascal's Pensays. They're really fun. I recommend them.
I'll tell you what. If you still subscribe to the Bookending Patreon at a level that
Is sufficient.
I'll send you a copy of the Pensays. No, making a note right now.
That's great.
I'm texting my wife / our book.
That's great. I want a copy of it too.
Yeah, you should have one. You should read it. You should at least skim it and find things that you like. It's interesting. It's interesting. Some things I'm like, yeah, I disagree with you. I think you really, really missed the boat there, Pascal. And it's weird. It's weird stuff. It's like he has a big emphasis on God as a God who hides himself. God is both a God of obscurity and evidence. And so he'll say things like, yeah, no, the Bible doesn't teach that creation gives evidence of God. It doesn't teach that everything is evidence of God.
Huh.
Right? And he'll
Weird.
quote a passage like one of the Psalms about that and then say, no, it doesn't teach that. Because his thing is that it gives enough evidence to condemn you in some sense, but also God is hiding himself. There's not actually enough to convince you. And so what he misses
is the sin of man.
He misses that it's sin. It's because of sin that God is hiding himself.
It's not that we have pure reason
That's right. That's right. It's very interesting. And he's very attuned to the idea that our sin makes us unable to think correctly in other ways.
But he can't translate it to that.
I think that's part of the broader system of Roman Catholic theology that he's in. And I don't like the nature grace kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't parse all of that totally, but it's just interesting, the places where you're like, I'm pretty sure the Bible just says what you said it didn't say. Like you quoted it. So, but for all that, he's helpful. He's helpful in talking with unbelievers. Like he's practically helpful. He gives you handles to approach. He's interesting to read about miracles, and he misses some stuff there, but he's just all like, yeah, you had to have miracles to validate who Jesus was. And Jesus makes that clear. And then he goes into this, I guess I'm giving you the negatives of Pascal, but I am just because I was thinking about him a lot. Then he's like, yeah, if you don't, doctrine actually can't regulate miracles. Miracles regulate doctrine. The word he would use is they validate or verify. But you can't do it the other way. You can't say the doctrine will decide which miracles are real. No, so he has this weird thing where because it's church tradition, that's the governing principle of all things, over scripture even, over doctrine. And church tradition is what teaches you what the scriptures actually teach. If you know anything about Roman Catholicism, hopefully you can follow my confused explanation. Tradition's over scripture in terms of governing the interpretation of it. Miracles are part of church tradition, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Like miracles that happen. I'm doing a bad job. What I'm trying to say is that he has some weird stuff. But he makes you think about a lot of things that you haven't. He makes you think about how important miracles actually are in the ministry of Jesus.
Well, what's compelling to me about the Pensays is there are so few compelling ways to me to really cultivate the life of the mind.
Yeah.
And Pascal's little meditations are one of those that I think, no, that's really good. That's really fun. That's really helpful. It
is.
There's so much, I guess what I mean is there's so much junk out there that, and I've read a lot, but a lot of the stuff masquerading as, and you see these guys posting on Twitter or whatever, unless you're reading intellectual gobbledygook and able to speak in the terms of intellectual gobbledygook, you're not actually, And
there's been an inverse relationship between, in some cases, there's been an inverse relationship between the ability to be an aphorist and the ability to actually be godly and helpful. So Nietzsche's a great writer. Schopenhauer's a great writer.
Yep.
Freud, is a pretty
compelling.
good writer.
He's actually compelling.
Like, these guys are all not great thinkers, I wouldn't say. They're pretty basic, actually, when you get down to it. But they are really compelling, just as aphorists, as proto-Twitter guys.
Exactly. They're just intellectual enough and sophisticated enough rhetoricians to be compelling to midwits. Right. And so you can study them from a rhetorical standpoint.
Yeah, God is dead, man, and we killed him, and he doesn't actually mean God is dead.
It sounds really smart and really compelling because it was a very poetic way of turning a thought you had on its head. And therefore, because it did that and it created a feeling in you or a trigger of some kind of like either a mental trigger or an intellectual trigger or an emotional trigger, you somehow translate that to correctness or truth or rightness or whatever. And man, it's just a load of nonsense.
Yeah.
And then you have these like, on top of that, you have these idiots who are like, unless you're reading obscure things that are unintelligible, it's like, man,
life is too short to read Hegel.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
and I don't care what anybody says. Nobody actually understands.
I don't know which one you're thinking of, but any of the postmodern guys for sure.
I do, but that begs the question, doesn't it?
Yes.
To say that?
Yes.
I just don't think that you know that. Oh, God. Sorry to be so pushbacky, but what's his name? Kant.
Thank you.
That's what you're going to say.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And you're going to push back on it?
Yeah, because it just begs the question. I'm not sure that you have the authoritative perspective to say that. Probably someone does. And
you're probably right. I mean, I've read enough Kant personally to be like, I don't have time for Kant. But
I think that's the problem anyway.
Well, I think the thing about Kant is there is a basic thing that a lot of people get from him, a basic worldview, a basic set of parameters. And I have no clue whether that's actually what Kant intended. I just know that that's what Western civilization has drawn from him. And I know that thing is not that great.
Well, and that's the thing that, I mean, look, you are only as good a thinker as you are a communicator, period. If you can't articulate it in an understandable way, I'm not sure that you've understood it yourself.
But isn't there just something called, isn't there something called bad writing that if you have enough time for someone, if you have enough time for it, actually, I'm thinking not of Kant, but I'm thinking of Van Til. I don't know if you call it bad writing or what, or just the fact that he was Dutch and writing in English. And it's like the dude is always struggling to break down his thought. And sometimes you'll get a paragraph where it's like crystal. But then the next paragraph, you're like, this is going to take me 20 minutes on this one paragraph.
And the way that I'm talking is it's easy for you to be then below average IQ and say, well, I can't understand this, therefore it's stupid.
Right.
Instead of, I can't understand this, therefore I'm stupid.
Well, but I feel like I want to have it both ways. Like, this is hard to understand, therefore I'm not that smart. Also,
if you were better,
it's kind of a bad writer.
If you were a better thinker, you would have been able to write in such a way that I could understand what you're trying to say.
Well, sorry, I was talking about myself as the reader there. I see what you're saying.
No. Yes, you as the reader saying that to the writer.
Well, yes, but I guess that there's different, like philosophical writing is a little different in that it gets so abstract that it's just weird to follow. It's like a different set of, it's like these guys are all about being in their head anyway, or whoever.
Yes, but then this is where I just return to Solomon and just say, no, the wisest man to ever live was one of the most concrete thinkers to ever live.
I think there's a difference between jargon writing, which is always bad, academic ease, legalese that just puffs itself up with big words in order to obscure cloudy thinking.
Theological writing.
There's also good technical writing, and we can all name or think of theologians or legal scholars or philosophers who simply use the correct terminology from their field, and therefore it's not clear to someone who doesn't have a background in that field, and that's okay. That's not necessarily.
But good technical writing is important when you get into deeper levels of nuance.
Right. You wouldn't expect that, cannot hold a good work of mathematics to Jake's standard and say, I don't understand that,
Right. You just don't.
Well, okay, fine. But I think what I want to do is leave room for some gray or middle ground where, in terms of development, like if you're someone breaking new ground and let's say you're not the greatest writer, maybe you understand a lot of what you're doing, but then even to your own mind, it has enough ambiguities because it's new. For instance, Augustine's a great writer, but no one, I don't think, like for instance, Calvin would say he's totally consistent in what he says about God's grace. We need God's grace in all these ways to be saved. Calvin's going to come and be more exact without even pretending.
Well, because Calvin's got the foundation of Augustine to build on, and
That's right.
And the time and
context and
and
whatever.
his context required it.
Absolutely.
Right?
That's
in a way
what
that
I mean.
Augustine's context didn't require it of him.
Sure.
And in fact, what Augustine's context required was a broad mastery.
Yeah.
And so
He
he
had.
he reaches into every corner of life and lays some pipe and pours some concrete that the West then built itself on.
Yeah. I guess I'm just trying to leave a little gray space in there. Some room.
Yeah, I don't think.
Well, I think that, okay, even in the course...
geniuses to suck at communicating.
Sure, well, even in the course of your own writing, in the course of, say, prepping a sermon, you've got your discovery.
Speaking of geniuses.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about me for a minute.
Right.
I'll leave you guys out of this because I don't know what your process is, but as, the only certified genius in this room that I'm aware of.
Mm-hmm.
No, in the process of, studying, preparing a sermon, you have discovery, right?
Yeah.
And in discovery, you are laying stuff down. You think you've wrapped your head around it, or you're wrapping your head around it, and you're writing, and then you set it aside, and then you come back and you're like, I have no idea what this means.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I have no idea what I was trying to say. Or I know what I was trying to say, and I thought I was saying it really clearly, but I was so far removed from, I was so deep down the rabbit hole that I was so far removed from people in the streets, in the pews, that I have to do a lot more work here to make this clear and understandable to somebody coming to it fresh for the first time. I've read the technical commentaries and I've read Calvin, I've read all this stuff. And so I'm like, I think I've got my head around this, but man, I've just skipped so many steps and overlooked so many connections, so many if-thens that, it's just not going to, people aren't going to understand what I'm saying, or it's not even that useful or helpful and just needs to go and be cut, which often is what ends up, happening.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with all that.
So I agree that, if you have somebody who's a philosophical thinker and he's in the throes of discovery, and he doesn't go back and clean it up or have the ability, because he has the problem of knowledge, as we like to say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's always a possibility.
Yeah.
But I just don't want to give Kant that he's so great a genius that he's indecipherable to everybody except for your friend from Tennessee who thinks he's wrapped his head around him.
Washington,
sorry.
Well, the thing about Kant is that he chose to be indecipherable. Like, that was part of his strategy.
Yeah, well, and that's what...
He wasn't exactly the guy who is like, I have all these ideas burning up and I just can't get them out. Kant wanted to be a little bit like, who's the famous obnoxious theologian now?
Owen, it's John Owen. Yeah. It drives me nuts. I used to love Owen, and I still do, because well, maybe I don't. I don't know. It's been a while since I've gone back. I don't want to go back to Owen. I think he's just wrong. I think
because
he's wrong.
He's obtuse. He chooses
on
to be
purpose,
obtuse.
and he says so, and he has his explanation for it. And it's just like, man, forget you.
Yeah.
Like, that's not your job.
Well, if I could just go back to Pascal for a second, I remembered the simple thing I wanted to say about the miracle stuff is that one thing he says is they wouldn't have been guilty of rejecting Jesus if he hadn't done the miracles, which on one level is true. And on another level, one thing Jesus says over and over is, if you'd understood the scriptures,
right?
Hello. So that's true in the sense that miracles are part of what was going to happen with the Messiah.
It's only true in the sense that the full package is always the full package.
That's right. Yeah.
But now you've just created a tautology.
Oh, a tautology. Right? Yeah, sure.
Right.
Sure.
If Jesus wasn't Jesus, then you wouldn't be guilty of not recognizing Jesus, because he wouldn't have been Jesus.
That's right.
Because if Jesus wouldn't have done the things that Jesus would have always done, then
that's right.
And that's just right. Like, what's your point? What's the
yeah?
What do you?
Yeah.
At that point, you're not actually saying anything.
Well, what Pascal does is parlay that into a weird sort of, the Catholic Church has miracles, therefore the reformers are wrong. Actually, that's kind of a weird thing that he does, because our miracles validate. Anyway, it gets weird, even though he's actually, as he goes, he's helping you think more clearly about certain things. Let me read a couple of good things from Pascal that I love, if you don't mind. A couple of short quotes.
Go ahead.
Just fun stuff. And there's any number of quotes that, I mean, I've tried to take some notes and take some quotes and just go online and to the free version of the EPUB version of this and just pull things. But let's see. Not only do we know God by Jesus Christ alone, but we know ourselves only by Jesus Christ. We know life and death only through Jesus Christ. Apart from Jesus Christ, we do not know what is our life, nor our death, nor God, nor ourselves. Thus, without the Scripture, which has Jesus Christ alone for its object, we know nothing, and see only darkness and confusion in the nature of God and in our own nature.
I love that.
It's pretty great. And then this is fun. What a chimera then is man, what a novelty, what a monster, what a chaos, what a contradiction, what a prodigy. Judge of all things, imbecile worm of the earth, depositary of truth, a sink of uncertainty and error, the pride and refuse of the universe. And then
that's Shakespearean,
right? No. This dude is so much fun to listen to. 'Cause I listen to him, and I've been reading certain parts again. But for in fact, if man had never been corrupt, he would enjoy in his innocence both truth and happiness with assurance. And if man had always been corrupt, he would have no idea of truth or bliss. But wretched as we are, and more so than if there were no greatness in our condition, we have an idea of happiness and cannot reach it. We perceive an image of truth and possess only a lie. Incapable of absolute ignorance and of certain knowledge, we have thus been manifestly in a degree of perfection from which we have unhappily fallen. So that's some part of his defense of original sin is what explains us.
Yeah.
How else can you explain all this? And he's always doing things like that.
Yeah.
It's so much fun. He's such a good writer.
That's beautiful and fun. And really cool.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thinker that you want to hit up against if you're thinking about cultivating the life of the mind.
Oh man.
Right. You can just sit with that thought over your morning coffee for a little bit and go get on with your day and be all the richer for it.
Yeah. It's great that way. It is.
Speaking of Roman, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think maybe I mentioned this before, but he got famous writing this thing called the Letters Provincial.
Yeah, I remember that. Yep.
Which is an attack on the Jesuits.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I just wanted to say that it's really funny what the Jesuits were doing. So they would excuse things like sorcery or usury or fighting a duel just by shifting the intention. So for instance, I think this is in Pascal's Letters Provincials, which was written anonymously maybe, and then he had to flee because he got in a lot of trouble for writing these before he was vindicated by the Catholic Church. So let's see. I'm just gonna read this, make of it what you will, but I think this is really funny. So he's calling them out for being fools and disgusting. This is about dueling. If a gentleman, says he, who is challenged to fight a duel is well known to have no religion, and if the vices to which he is openly, unscrupulously addicted are such as would lead people to conclude, in the event of his refusing to fight, that he's actuated not by the fear of God, but by cowardice, and induce them to say of him that he was a hen and not a man, in that case, he may, to save his honor, appear at the appointed spot, not indeed with the express intention of fighting a duel, but merely with that of defending himself, should the person who challenged him come there unjustly to attack him. His action in this case viewed by itself will be perfectly indifferent, for what moral evil is there if you step into a field or take a stroll in expectation of meeting someone and defending yourself in the event of being attacked? I don't know if you follow that.
Definition of sophistry.
It's amazing. If you're challenged to fight a duel, well, you can't appear there to fight the duel, but if you need to appear there to defend yourself and save your honor, that's different. That was the Jesuits. They would do this on all kinds of things.
The definition of sophistry.
It's amazing. So Pascal just nails them to the wall and gets the Pope eventually to call the Jesuits out. So you got to love him for stuff like that. This guy had a lot of skin in the game and then died famously at age 39. So did not live very long. All right. That's all I have on Pascal.
All right. I want to read my favorite quote on clarity in writing, just to return to that contentious issue.
Sure.
This is from Strunk and White. I think we've talked about it before on our podcast. But this is White's advice on, I think this is pretty clearly White and not Strunk. It's from the afterword or whatever. Clarity is not the prize in writing, nor is it always the principal mark of a good style. There are occasions when obscurity serves a literary yearning, if not a literary purpose, and there are writers whose mean is more overcast than clear. But since writing is communication, clarity can only be a virtue. And although there is no substitute for merit in writing, clarity comes closest to being one. Even to a writer who is being intentionally obscure or wild of tongue, we can say, be obscure clearly, be wild of tongue in a way we can understand. Mm-hmm. Even to writers of market letters telling us, but not telling us which securities are promising, we can say, be cagey plainly, be elliptical in a straightforward fashion. And I think the mark of good unclarity is that it's clear. And I think you could say that about Plato. You could say that about Aristotle. You could say that about many of the great writers whose ideas you can't grasp, but at least you know what it is they're wrestling with, and it inspires you to want to wrestle with it too, because it's not just gobbledygook.
Yeah. And I think the other way of saying that is intentionality, right? Like there's purpose.
Right.
And as opposed to the guy who just thinks that he can slap some crap on paper, and because you can't understand it, that makes him profound.
Right.
Right.
Well, I think it's even true of the postmoderns who have sort of stuck around, Roland Barthes' Death of the Author. I don't know that Roland Barthes really knew what he meant by that, but we all understand the poetic conceit, the sort of idea. We can all bounce off of that concept. Does the author matter? Does his intention matter? So we've all been given a little handle that we can play with, whether we agree with him, whether he meant anything, whether he communicated anything. He was unclear in a clear way. And I think that at
least serves a purpose.
That's the failing of so much poetry. It's not that so much modern poetry, I should say. It's not that there shouldn't be some decoding or there shouldn't be an aha moment where you have to penetrate through it. It's just that it should
got to all be there.
All the pieces of the puzzle need to be there. And then asking you to put the pieces together, or even you failing to put the pieces together, that's fine.
That's fine.
That's not the author's fault.
That's fine. But the author can say 2 + 2 equals. He can say 2 × 2 equals. He can say 47 + 62 divided by 6 equals. But he has to have each layer of the equation and the signs and the equals all have to be there.
Or he could even say, gosh, 2 × 3 with the parenthesis mark and then this little squiggle. I don't know what it comes to, but that's an interesting problem, huh?
Right.
Maybe it comes to this. Maybe it comes to that. There's all kinds of ways to do it.
Yeah.
Right. But a lot of modern poetry is just, if I throw some numbers on the page, in any indiscernible pattern, I don't have to have a meaning or a purpose. It looks and feels sophisticated to me because it's indiscernible.
Right.
Therefore, it's art.
Right. I can't think of a good example of this, but people will sometimes defend movies that have unclear intentions, and they'll say, Inception. Would you say Inception is a good example or a bad example of what we're talking about?
A bad example.
In which part?
Well, actually, you know what? I haven't thought about it. I've only thought Inception is a bad movie, and it has some artistic ambiguity. I don't really know I think it's a bad movie, whether it's a good example or bad of what you're talking about.
Well, so are you specifically referring to the famous,
the ending,
the top thing?
The top spinning at the end, yeah. I guess that's
an interesting example.
You could make a case.
That's an interesting example. I mean, I think the top spinning is just fine. I think if you want to pick at that movie, there's things you can pick at.
But not the top.
And maybe you can pick at some of the clarity and the emotional and the intentions.
Yeah, I was only thinking that the top is the thing that happened, not a thing that I hated.
Well, without an actual good example to talk about, we will be of limited clear use on that topic.
There's got to be a simple one.
Well, maybe an easier direction to take it's modern art.
Yeah.
But I don't know that we should go down that rabbit hole either. I just think, does it depend on which artist is splashing paint on a canvas?
Right.
Or what?
Oh man, we could spend all day talking about this.
Yeah, I just I'm over it.
Right. What do you got? What else you got for us, Ben?
I have something else fun I've been reading, which I told you about a little bit before, but I just have a couple more quotes from this book by J.H. Bavinck, Between the Beginning and the End.
Sure.
I just have to recommend this. So he's in a section where he's talking about Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane going to the cross. And he's comparing that to God confronting Adam after Adam sinned in the garden. And I guess I kind of, I knew that was parallel in some vague sense, but I hadn't thought much about it. And so he points out stuff like this. He points out how, Adam hides, right? And then Adam shifts blame. So here's what he says about Jesus. The second Adam does not point at the fellow citizens he interacts with, nor to his disciples to accuse them. On the contrary, he relieves them, lets them hide behind him by taking full responsibility himself. And so just even that thought, the reversal of hiding, was really helpful to think about what Jesus did. And then he makes this point that I don't think I've thought about before, which is that there's a dual, you can look at the whole thing from two different perspectives when Jesus is being arrested and led to the cross. And so on the one hand, you can look at it like this is and in one sense, this is this kind of thing. You've probably heard it before if you've spent your life in the church, but he just puts this together really clearly. On the one hand, Jesus being arrested by soldiers and taken before the kangaroo court of the Jewish council and whatnot it is man at his most sinful putting God on trial. On the other hand, it is a sinless God putting Adam on trial. It is both at once. And so that dual nature is just helpful. So here we go. Then we realize that this picture is not what it seems, that we are not dealing here with God in shackles, but with the man Adam who is bound hand and foot. Once again, we are confronted with the mystery of the reversibility that is so typical of the entire Passion story, which holds true in two respects, where it points to the shackled God dragged along on the Via Dolorosa, the way of sorrow, by human hands, but also where it tells us of the shackled Adam who is summoned by God before his tribunal. And he writes really beautifully of this.
So in thinking you're going to put God on trial, what you actually did was you put Adam on trial. You thought you were condemning God, but you condemned yourselves.
You condemned yourself, but in condemning yourself, God freed you from your sin. It is crazy. So just pointing out that the whole thing always has that dual character. Like these things, these two separate things are both happening. Mm-hmm. They're the epitome of actually two seemingly opposite processes. God's on trial. No, actually, man is on trial. Well, God is on trial. No, but man is on trial. And this guy gets kind of poetical. So stuff like, this is Adam, a hopeless and helpless creature, disillusioned and defeated. To top it all off, God's verdict grabs him, drags him out of the garden, and shackles him so that he, robbed of his strength, must travel the road of one damned by God. And that's Jesus representing all of us. And I don't know, it's just helpful. There's some beautiful writing. There's just a bunch of good handles for Jesus, what Jesus was doing. I still have a bunch of chapters to go. Been moving through this slowly.
What's the name of the book again?
Between the Beginning and the End. Kind of a generic title for a book. I think that's the name of it. I'm even forgetting because it's a generic enough title that, yeah, that's right.
By
J.H. Bobbing. It's actually a short book. The reason it's taking me so long is I'm like reading it on my phone at different times.
Gotcha. Just in the in-between places?
Yeah. It's short. It's punchy. It's not all great. There's just some places where you're like, you really whiffed that one. But there's a lot of stuff where you're like, man, this is like inspiring me to want to, I don't know, think a little more deeply about what Jesus did. He just has some beautiful things to say. That's all for Bobbink.
Cool. Sounds great. I don't have a lot of crosstalk on it, but what else you got?
Watch the movies.
What'd you watch?
Man, I guess I watched a bunch of things since our last round table.
All right.
I watched The More the Merrier, which you recommended.
I recommended on this very program.
It was great. It's a great movie. Really cool. Really fun.
Screwball comedy starring the great Gene Arthur, great Joel McCrea, I think.
Joel McCrea, and then what's the old guy's name?
Charles Coburn. Charles Coburn is awesome.
Charles Coburn is awesome. Yeah, it's just excellent.
Really funny. Once again, it's about the housing crisis in Washington, D.C. during World War II, some kind of topical thing that was going on then that, you won't know anything about, probably. I didn't. But it means that there wasn't a lot of places to live going around. And so what do you know it? But an attractive guy and attractive gal, they got to share an apartment together. Hijinks ensue.
Do they fall in love?
Well, Jake, you'll have to watch the film to... It's famously racy, not in a way that like people shouldn't watch it, but it's for its time.
There's one scene especially where you're like...
Very famous scene with the streetlight and all that.
Yeah, I was like, whoa.
It's like, yeah, it goes farther than...
Than you expect.
Yeah. Not in like, just in your mind, I guess.
Well, it is extremely sexual without anyone taking off any articles of clothing. It's
Right.
just like... you're like... Anyway, sit next to your wife. It's great. I don't know what else to say about it.
It's fantastic.
I really
recommend
appreciated it.
Yep.
We finished The Well Digger's Daughter, which is this French drama, which is really good. Billed as a romantic comedy for some reason. If you look it up on Google, no, it's not. It is a drama that is also a romance. And I don't know what to say about it. It's actually about, spoilers and stuff, I guess. It's about like fornication and restoration, which makes it sound terrible, but it's actually this really gripping drama about two families, basically, and about a dad character who you really like. I kept thinking this movie is going to do all this typical stuff that I hate, where the dad's angry at his daughter, and things are miserable, and he's a bad dad, and he's just a jerk because of her sin. But it's not like that. It is about actual, like a society where if something happened, if your daughter slept with someone else's son, you would actually have family shame, and you would have to deal with that. And so in our society where that's been lost, and the idea of that seems scandalous and even mean to us, it's quite a movie to watch. It's quite a movie to watch, and it ends quite happily.
Spoilers.
Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry, but I don't know how else to tell you about it.
Nobody's going to watch it if you didn't say that, so...
Yeah,
good spoilers.
I didn't think so. I was thinking the whole time, because you feel the movie in the pit of your stomach. You're like, how miserable is this going to make me? I've seen movies like this. They're just about making you miserable, but this movie isn't. I'm like, oh, that was nice. I really recommend it. It's good. There's 2 of these movies. It's the newer one. This is based, I think it's like a famous stage play or a novel or something in French.
Nathan's general rule is anything called the blankety blank's woman's role is a bad novel, or if I don't want to watch like The Hangman's Daughter or The Time Traveler's Wife, or there's like a whole genre. It's almost like women relate to things emotionally and see themselves in the role of caregiver to someone, to like a male figure. And so they I don't know what it is about women, but they write these books where it's always like, or they make these movies where it's like the guy, there's something interesting about this fella, and then she was related to him. And I resent the entire genre. Our wives have all read a million of these things. They go around like viruses. I'm sure they're great, but
I like this.
My principle is
a lot of it is about the well digger. So the dad.
Right.
But that's a good thing in this case. I saw Midnight Run, which you also recommended.
Yeah, what do you think?
These are all movies I watched with my wife. We liked all of them, which is a nice run of movies for us to both like. It's really good. It's more of a
super fun.
Yeah, it's not a like laugh out loud kind of screwball comedy. Screwball comedy version of itself, which is what I was expecting. I was expecting like kind of the really loud, really fast, really quippy, really annoying Ryan Reynolds kind of version of this sort of thing, because that's all I've seen trailers for in the past 10 years. And so then I'm watching this movie, I'm like, this is like a slow-paced movie that has a well-written script. They wrote it to express character and motivation and let you enjoy the relationship these guys had. And it's not overly quippy. It is funny. It's not like gut-busting laughing funny most of the time. And they actually care about the relationship between Robert De Niro and Charles Grodin and building them as characters and letting you just spend time with them.
Right.
I just didn't expect that.
Well, a wonderful supporting cast with Yaphet Kotto as the FBI agent is after them.
He's great.
He and De Niro have a fun, like, adversarial relationship.
And what's the Uncle Sal guy? Who's that guy? The mobster.
Like the main bad guy?
Yeah.
Oh, Dennis Farina. He's great.
I love Dennis Farina.
I love Dennis Farina.
He is great.
Yeah.
This movie takes its time, man. I just didn't expect it. So it's a really fun buddy comedy with a little bit of action.
And a really corny 1980s score by Danny Elfman.
But a really good one.
Yeah, it is good. But
it takes a second.
It's a lot.
It is a lot. It takes a second. But once you realize that
can we add 9 saxophones in here? Because if we can, we're going to do it.
We're going to do it. No, I came to really appreciate his score by the end too. It's a quality Elfman score, but
not one of the zany gothic like
Beetlejuice
no. from the grave.
It's like 80s pop rock score kind of stuff, but in a good way. That's what I think. Yeah, I recommend it. It's a good movie. It's got plenty of bad language. It's got a couple of like really crude jokes, but even that, like, there was like one place where I was like, oh, that was a really gross joke, and then the rest of it was like, not that.
No, it's one of those movies that grows. Like, I've seen it twice now. I think I saw it a long time ago, and then I watched it with Meredith not too long ago, which is what made me. And it's one of those movies where the second time you watch it, when you're kind of in on the joke and you laugh a lot more, and you appreciate it a lot more because you're like, because it is such a simple buddy comedy kind of thing. But it's like once you sort of trust it, you're like, oh, this is a lot more clever and a lot more interesting and just a lot more
right.
And the whole ending, without spoiling it, hinges not on a big action scene, but on doing a certain ploy with someone, getting the gangster to accept something incriminating. They bring a lot of suspense out of this very simple premise. And the relationship is really sweet between the guys, and Grodin's a lot of fun. And
that other bounty hunter is a lot of fun.
Yeah, all De Niro's kind of foils are great. You've got an early performance by good old Joey Pantaleone, Cypher from The Matrix.
Oh, yeah.
Joey Pants.
Joey Pants.
Yeah, he's great.
He's great playing his typical, like...
Yeah. Terrible.
You gotta come through for me here. Yeah, kind of. He's the bail bondsman that De Niro works for.
It's good stuff. It has a lot of plot in a way that I really appreciated. Okay, all right. That's good. And then we watched a movie that I've been wanting to see for a long time for whatever reason. I mean, I know what reasons, but it just looked compelling. We watched The Verdict with Paul Newman.
Ah.
Yeah, I liked it too. I didn't expect it to be so grim and awful.
His storyline is like what? The Catholic Church somehow let girls go lapse into comas or something?
No, it's the diocese owns or maintains this hospital. 2 well-respected, well-known doctors at the hospital, they committed malpractice, and a woman lost her baby and went into a permanent coma, became a vegetable, and then they covered it up. And so the archdiocese, you just know, like you're in on the conversation with, I guess, the bishop or whatever, and he's like, yeah, we're not going to let this out. This is bad. This looks bad. Mistakes happen. This looks bad. We're going to cover this up. Just very straightforward. And then they hire this awesome law firm headed by this amazing, I don't even know the word for him, but Paul Mason. Is it Paul Mason who plays Kincannon?
Is it? It's not Paul Mason.
Sorry. It's Mason. Charles Mason? I think it's Charles Mason.
I'm trying to remember.
James Mason.
Oh, James Mason. Yeah.
James Mason is amazing as this older lawyer who's just this brilliant, compelling, charismatic guy with this whole team of lawyers who fawn at him and are at his beck and call. He does that without being like just a pure villain.
Right.
He's just a guy who is just this powerful guy. He does the job he's given to do. He understands his job. He's very good at his job. And Paul Newman is a total loser, washed up alcoholic. You spend a lot of depressing screen time with Paul Newman being a loser. Whoa. It was kind of an emotionally exhausting movie for that reason. And Paul Newman takes this case partly and won't take a money offer because he feels like he'll be damned if he does. But it's not like he feels that he'll be damned so much that he wouldn't take the money if he really thought he would definitely lose. So he's just this compromised guy up to the end, which is another thing I didn't expect. You don't get your typical sort of heartwarming. Anyway, it's a good movie. It's compelling. It's a little bit exhausting. All the performances are great. Newman is great. James Mason is great. Newman's older guy, his mentor, uncle figure, lawyer partner.
Is that Jack Warden?
I think that's right. That guy's awesome.
Yeah, that guy's great.
That guy's awesome. The woman is great, whoever she is, his love interest, the doctor. like the bad guy doctor who committed malpractice and wants to get away. Everyone is great. Every scene crackles. The judge is like the most villainous. He's just a worm, basically. But he's awesome as a performance.
Yeah, I mean, if you like courtroom dramas, people...
It brings stuff that is not typical in a courtroom drama. Like, I can't think of scenes I've seen with where the bad guy lawyer is like training his team and they're talking through what to expect.
My Cousin Vinny.
Yeah, you're right. You got me.
That is one of the other great courtroom dramas. And I'm not being facetious when I say that.
My Cousin Vinny's fun. I like this movie more than My Cousin Vinny, but I guess I'm not just a really big My Cousin Vinny fan.
You're not a big Vinny head.
Even a scene where they show this lawyer and his guys training the doctor witness how to act and what to say on stage, and where they're like just smacking him so hard for using obtuse medical terminology and training him, to say things that are a lie without being a lie in a more compelling way. It's just really cool. You're like, man, this movie just makes you think about a lot of things in the legal world.
Helps you understand what went on behind the scenes in the
Trump-Harris debate.
In the Trump-Harris debate last night. Yeah.
Absolutely. If you just think about this and how much you just suddenly understand like lawyers a little bit better. And I don't say that because this movie's lawyers are all sleazy. They aren't actually. It's not like the bad guy lawyer is just a pure bad guy. You don't even feel that way.
Well, this is, of course, directed by the great Sidney Lumet, the director of arguably the best courtroom drama of all time, 12 Angry Men.
Yeah.
And so he knows his way around a courtroom.
Yeah.
Filmographically speaking, if that's a word. And
it's beautifully filmed.
It's great. Newman gives one of those Oscar-y kind of star performances. He's washed up, but his blue eyes still shine through.
They still shine.
It's a great showcase for him.
He still ends up fighting to the end.
I'm a little hit and miss on Newman sometimes, but I think this is one of his best. Yeah, it's a great movie. And yes, Charles Mason is always wonderful.
James Mason. Sorry, I threw you off. I called him several wrong names.
Yeah, well, I don't know who Charles Mason is, but James Mason, always wonderful.
Man, that guy.
Of course, we've covered him on these podcasts. Not this podcast, but other podcasts. And
is he North by Northwest?
He's the bad guy in Northwest.
Yeah.
You want me to play dead? Your very next role. I'm sure you.
He's awesome. I don't know what to say.
And James Mason is great. The Salem's Lot TV adaptation, the Stephen King piece of trash. He plays the vampire's familiar, the kind of Renfield guy, the guy that comes into town and sets up shop so that he can have the crate shipped in. And he's just this very elegant old world kind of mysterious old man. And he's wonderful. I'm sure James Mason did better things with his career, but James Mason, of course, in the original Star is Born, not the original, the second adaptation of Star is Born, but the one before Lady Gaga. He was the washed up star crossing paths with Judy Garland. She was becoming a star and he was losing himself to drink. James Mason. Oh, and he was Captain Nemo in 2000 Leagues Under the Sea, one of my favorites as a kid, the Disney thing.
I've really never seen that.
And then if anybody had the joy of seeing Stanley Kubrick's adaptation of Lolita, he plays Humbert Humbert, which I don't necessarily recommend for obvious reasons, but, he's good at it.
Yeah.
What's your favorite courtroom drama, Jake? Fun fact about Jake, Jake wanted to be a lawyer at a certain point.
I did, and that was back in my middle school into early high school John Grisham years.
Now you litigate morality.
That's right. I don't have a favorite courtroom drama. I'm not a big fan of courtroom dramas.
Yeah, I'm hit and miss on them. I mean, I like the good ones and don't like the
A Few
bad
Good
ones.
Men, I think, is your favorite. That's what I remember.
Which one?
Don't have here's the thing about A Few Good Men. It makes a colossal mistake that is so stupid, which is they say our strategy is to make Jack Nicholson be an idiot and just tell us that he committed the crime. We should do that. And then they go and do it. And it's just dumb. I mean, I would love the movie if all the dialogue, all the scenes were the same, but they came up with a good plan. The good plan didn't work. And then in like a last
in the
moment, Cruise is like, I'm going to push him until that could be.
If it's just like an intuitive, like I'm failing, but wait a minute. Maybe I can keep giving this guy rope
And he'll hang himself.
and let him hang himself because there's no other way for me to win this. That would have been awesome.
But as the kind of smug Sorkin-y hand-holding that gets you to, our plan is to...
It's the dumbest possible plan you could ever imagine an actual lawyer...
With this whip-sharp, successful, decorated general that Nicholson's playing, it's like, you don't make that plan. That's
he's like...
That's everything that's dumb.
It's literally, you've got Jack Nicholson over there. Like, you are not going to trap this dude.
Right.
That's not the plan. Maybe you can get lucky, but you don't look across at a character played by Jack Nicholson, the decorated general who has that level of charisma and command of himself, and think our best play is to trick this guy into
being a bumbling moron,
turning himself from the most competent man in the room into a bumbling moron. Like, it's just so bad.
It's
so
just the smug elitist hatred of conservatives that Sorkin's always had.
Exactly.
Like,
and it's
obviously he wants to growl and bark and tell us how he defends our freedom and stuff. So all we have to do is bait, this
idiot,
proto-MAGA
this yokel into hanging himself like he wants to do,
and then he will. It's a really dumb part of a movie that in all of its individual scenes is wonderful.
There's a dark, dirty underbelly to all of our military, and it's this evil Southern redneck, misogynistic, chauvinistic, racist jerk that populates all of our military that we're going to expose. And with our handsome, young, blue-eyed hero, idealistic hero, Mr. Smith's going to go to Washington and expose I just hate it so much. And I hate Sorkin for that reason.
Well, I'm looking through the best courtroom movies on IMDb. Yeah, Sorkin does suck, but he's
I don't know why that makes me laugh. But
I mean, Sorkin just needs a director like David Fincher who can rein him in and make a great movie out of his material because he is a good writer.
He's a good writer, but man. I mean, I used to love all of his movies growing up.
A Few Good Men is one of those movies, if you see it on TV, not that any of us have like channel churning TV, not that any of our listeners do, but back in the day, if you saw it on TBS, like you'd stay there because whatever scene would have
sucked into great dialogue, right? And then it would just pop and it'd move and you would just be sucked in. And
part of that great
any number of
legendary Rob Reiner run with Princess Bride and Misery and Spinal Tap. Like Rob Reiner had this. Anyway, I'm looking at
courtroom. It's like even movies like, I mean, I loved The West Wing growing up, and even movies like The American President.
The American President's another part of that run, and it's stupid.
And it is such a horrible movie, but I don't know how many times I watched it and loved it.
I'd watch it again. I mean, it's so charming.
It is very charming, and it's also idiotic.
It is idiotic, but man, Michael Douglas, I wish he was our president, and I wish
And that's what Aaron Sorkin gave you, and he fed that sort of like 90s idealism.
Right, and he's got to defeat evil Richard Dreyfuss, evil conservative
Bob Rumsfeld.
Wow, that's amazing.
I am the president. Such a great little Sorkin-y piece of garbage.
Straw men and burn them.
And he put a bomb under that straw man.
All right, I'm looking at the IMDb best courtroom movies. I'm going to tell you about them. So 12 Angry Men, obviously we all like it, but whoever wants to actually watch
nobody. It's not. It's a good piece of film that is not rewatchable.
I mean, it's good in school when you want to teach kids about what used to pass for a civic process in this nation before it was destroyed.
Well, and in a film school context too, just like how do you make a whole movie in one room?
In one room, yeah. Answer: you change the lenses and you make it look like the ceiling is moving in on the people, and you shoot it above at the beginning and you shoot it below
at the end.
So next is Judgment at Nuremberg, which is, if you want to watch 3 hours of them being like, I think we should condemn these Nazis, then
probably the Nazis were bad.
It's a good movie. To Kill a Mockingbird, I despise. I think it's a horrible adaptation of a great book. I think Gregory Peck is woefully miscast as a square-chested, heroic version of Atticus Finch that is not in any way, shape, or form the guy that's actually in the novel. I hate that movie. I know that's like
heresy.
That's heresy, but it's a
heresy.
It's a bad movie if you love the novel. If you actually love the novel for what's actually in the novel,
which you should, because it is it is in the conversation of the great American novel and deserves its place in that conversation.
And Atticus is a great hero, but he is a great hero precisely because he's not Gregory Peck, and he chooses to be Gregory Peck, not because he was born as Gregory Peck, but Gregory Peck was born as Gregory Peck. That's why he's Gregory Peck. Next, Witness for the Prosecution, a classic. If you haven't seen it, I think we talked about it on the Bookening or Sanity at the Movies.
A little Agatha Christie adaptation.
Wonderful Billy Wilder movie. Have you seen Witness for the Prosecution?
That I want to see. That
I think of the ones you've named so far, that might be my favorite.
I love that movie.
Why have I not seen that?
It's so fun, so witty, such a great great Agatha Christie plot. But somebody did the characters and the dialogue. Yay! Best of both worlds. Charles Laughton, wonderful. Elsie Lancaster as the nurse. The great Marlene Dietrich, of course, is the potential.
She pops.
Inherit the Wind sucks. It's a liberal.
Oh yeah, I remember that nonsense.
I've heard that title. I've never seen it.
It's about
the monkey trial,
the
Scopes trial.
The Scopes trial.
And
But the thing that's so terrible about that movie is that the liberal lawyer, he like comes into the city and, you know, they're like, we don't trust you. And we're a bunch of conservative yokels that are mad that you're even here. And so I read about the actual story. And the town was like super nice and super chill,
of course
and
it
super
was.
polite and super kind. And it's like, you can make a liberal movie that tells that story and is even pro-Darwinist or whatever, but to weight the deck that way, to stack the deck, to not actually be like, okay, I don't agree with these people, but isn't it more interesting to have them be people?
Human?
Instead of caricatures?
Yeah.
Instead of...
Nope, got to dehumanize them.
Next is Anatomy of a Murder, which is a great Jimmy Stewart
I haven't
film.
seen that one.
That's pretty good.
If I have, I don't remember it.
I would recommend that. It is one of those movies from the 50s, or I think in this case, maybe, it's 1959, where you can tell that for the time they're being really racy, but now it's like just nothing. So there's all these scenes where she's like, and then the crime happened and panties, and they really like kind of milk it.
Bum, bum, bum.
You're like, oh, she's talking about her undergarments. And it's just like barely registers now. And yet the movie weirdly, by today's standards, weirdly like sticks with it because
fixates on it.
They're doing something really salacious and big. And, we're actually talking about what a real sex crime trial would be or something. But it's a great Jimmy Stewart. You're kind of in his maybe slightly more dark Hitchcock mode, like a more... He's doing his folksy thing, but it's not Mr. Smith. It's not one of the Capra things. It's more it's more of a down to earth, washed up Jimmy Stewart, and defending a soldier who claims he killed an innkeeper due to temporary insanity after the victim raped his wife. It's just a good movie. And then we get into a bunch of stuff that I don't like. Primal Fear. Did you guys grow up with that?
No,
that's really dumb. In the Name of the Father. Paths of Glory is really depressing. The Lincoln Lawyer. Beginning of the Reconnaissance.
No.
I think that's probably fun for people who like those kinds of
things. I remember
things.
seeing, what was that lame John Travolta lawyer movie?
Oh.
It really fizzles. It has some good scenes. I like Travolta usually in movies.
Where he's going up against like a water corporation or something.
Yeah.
What is that called?
Oh, yeah.
That trailer was in front of so many.
I've read that book.
Really? It's not a Grisham, I don't think, is it?
I think it's a Crichton.
Is it a civil action?
Really? Yeah, it is. A civil action.
It just, yeah.
What's funny is there's almost no Grisham on this IMDb list. I mean, I'm sure there is, but none in the top 10. Time to Kill is a Grisham we probably all grew up with.
I never watched. I don't know that I've watched a Grisham movie. I've only read the books.
You ever saw The Firm? Or
I've seen a bunch.
I don't think. I've not seen The Firm. I would have. I think at one point said The Firm was my favorite book. Probably I was 14 or something stupid.
The Rainmaker.
Seen that?
I've never seen that.
It really pops with Damon and Voight as the slimy evil lawyer villain, and I think Claire Danes as the love interest. But it's also gross. Like the way it ends is really disgusting. And at the time, anyway, can I just say what happens?
Sure.
Well,
spoilers.
Damon wins.
I've already read it.
Oh, good. Damon wins the case, and then Claire Dane beats her abusive husband to death with a baseball bat, and that's a victory. And then Matt Damon's like, I'll always love the law, but I can't practice anymore. And then that's kind of what happens, as I recall.
Did you get away with it?
I don't know. Maybe she doesn't actually beat him to death, but I just remember there's this scene where he's lying on the floor and Matt Damon lets her go at him with a baseball bat, something like that.
There's always I don't remember. It's been like 30 years since or 25 years since I would have read this,
Right.
but Grisham's whole mechanic is he'll set up the cathartic ending, and there's always like some like loophole, some plausible
Right.
situation that allows you to, our good guy, to stick it to the bad guys and get away with it. And usually it's always very legal, or
Well, that was the thing that
there's like this, it's all set up in such a way that it gets turned on its head.
I really didn't like reading Grisham. I tried a couple times and I don't think I ever made it through one, precisely because he felt so, as a kid, I mean, just as like a preteen, whatever, whenever you encounter those books, it would have been when I was reading Clancy and King and all those guys, and Crichton, and Grisham was my least
Clancy, that's who did it,
the
Travolta
yes,
civil action. Yeah.
But Grisham always felt so, it felt like he was a better writer. He was a little bit more talented than a lot of those guys.
Sorry, no, it's a nonfiction book by Jonathan Harr.
Is the Civil Action?
Civil Action. Yeah, it's about a water contamination case.
Yeah, I remember that. Anyway,
so it's actually based on a true story.
Grisham
I knew that, but I thought it was.
You thought it was Clancy. Yeah.
Grisham always felt so calculated with the sex and the violence. It was always like,
Yes.
even if it was just a married couple, like we're going to start with them in bed and we're going to describe what they're doing. It just always felt like this is what 90s and late 80s readers expect in their books. And so I'm going to give it to them, and I'm going to give it to them quickly.
Well, that was a big part of it for me, was as a 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old boy, I'd have books and I'd get the
gangbusters.
Absolutely. And honestly, as much as the thrill of it all coming together, I have all the images of sex scenes and things in my head too.
Yeah, I mean, King's the same way.
And he doesn't paint them, but he gives you enough to,
right.
At
least King is an actual sicko. Like King's just, I think, writing from the id, which isn't good, but at least it doesn't feel like it doesn't combine sort of sexual debasedness with also prostitution. Like Grisham's just doing it because it's what's commercial, and that's extra slimy to me.
Then doesn't he posture himself as a Christian, sort of? Or
Yeah, I
something?
think he might. I mean, he certainly has a conservative base that likes him.
Grisham.
Well, let's see. Aaron Brockovich, who cares?
No.
JFK. I love JFK. I just rewatched JFK for the first time.
I thought about rewatching it, but I just
seen it.
have such loathing for Costner that I can't.
I do too, and he's playing the Jimmy Stewart role. He's got that. He's got a bad Southern accent, and he's just the greatest guy in the world. And he wants to go back to a time before America was fractured and blah blah. I wanted to believe in something, but they killed him, Jim. It's Costner is obnoxious, is my point. But boy, you got John Candy as a suspect. You got Tommy Lee Jones playing a gay man that probably killed JFK. You just got a murderer's row. You got Gary Oldman as Oswald. You got Kevin Bacon as a soldier. It's just like a murderer's row of fun actors from that time with juicy material. And in our post-truth kind of every conspiracy has come true, actually it turns out that, big whoever is out to get us, and we just all take that for granted now. The movie plays so much better. I mean, I think it just like the movie's been vindicated by time actually in a way that's pretty special. It's not that its theory of who killed JFK is anything but bonkers, but just living for 3 hours in the fever dream of conspiracy and bouncing off of all the different theories and all the different things and the magic bullet and the Russians and the CIA
but not the Mossad.
Not the Mossad in this case.
Gangsters, though.
It's great. It's bravura filmmaking.
I've never seen an Oliver Stone movie.
I mean, he's, famously intense and often gross, and JFK probably has something. But, I mean, the other thing he does is, the movie was really influential. Like a lot of YouTube videos and things, I think, keyed off of it because he takes all this footage, old timey footage, the Zapruder film
and
video footage, uses different film stocks, blends it all together, cuts it really fast with this propulsive music, and it's just still one of the best versions of that type of like the cliche that we have now of like, we're going to put the creepy music under the, montage of this and that and the third thing. And oh, there's the president talking to us and there's the news clip.
Right.
And just kind of the post-media blender effect. Done really well. I like that movie. Michael Clayton, Trial of the Jury 7. Everyone agrees that's a horrible. My Cousin Vinny comes in 36. Obviously, everybody loves My Cousin Vinny. All right. Well, that was a fun journey through The Devil's Advocate. Yay. All right. Reversal of Fortune. Jeremy Irons, Oscar-winning performance. Liar, Liar. Great lawyer movie.
There it is. There's my favorite courtroom drama.
Your favorite courtroom drama.
Liar, Liar.
I've only ever seen that movie once, and I laughed my head off.
See, she lied about her age, and so she gets off the hook.
I was not a Jim Carrey kid, and many kids were. I mean, I'm the right age to be a Jim Carrey kid, but I did not like particularly The Mask. I certainly didn't like Ace Ventura. Like it just wasn't my style. It wasn't my thing. Even at my most sort of, I'm sure you could name something from that era that I do really like or think is funny, that even that's crass and that I shouldn't. But Jim Carrey was just never my speed. But Liar Liar did, I remember, really make me laugh. Just the conceit of, it's just the movie has one joke, which is he has to tell the truth in every circumstance. So he's going to say these awkward things to people. And
you do get some good jokes out of that.
They managed to milk it. It's just a good.
I can still go back and appreciate some of those jokes. Although some of them I won't repeat.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Then they did they basically rebooted that same movie with Jim Carrey.
Yes Man or whatever.
Yes Man. I never saw that.
For some reason, I have seen some of that. I don't know why. I must have been depressed, or maybe my wife was depressed or something. Sometimes these things happen. Ben, you got any more movies for us?
I was just thinking of, there's one other that we watched a while ago.
Man. This is
a
very Ben-centric episode.
Yeah.
I know. Had to happen someday.
I was hoping to talk about the movie I saw.
Too bad, Jake. My turn now.
It's my turn now. All right, what's your last movie, Ben?
Well, a while ago we watched The Cane Mutiny.
The Cane Mutiny.
Which does have a courtroom element, actually.
I have seen a couple versions of that story.
This is the one with Humphrey Bogart as the mad captain.
Okay, and who's the...
I mean, your best well-known star is not the main dude who I'd never seen before and is not very compelling in my opinion, but what's his name? Double Indemnity star, Fred McMurray.
Oh, Fred McMurray.
Fred McMurray is an important side character. I don't know that I want to spoil this for anyone who hasn't seen it. And it's a famous-ish movie, but man, did I come away hating it. Just hating it. Because it plays a mean and unfair trick on you. Can we just spoil the whole thing and tell you?
Yeah, I hate those kinds of movies. I'm
okay.
not going to see it.
All right. So The Cane Mutiny is about, this young, blue-eyed recruit who goes into the Navy and he's on this ship, and it's all about our relationship with authority. See, this movie's about authority. I want you to know that this movie's about how we think about our authorities and how we treat our authorities, because he's got a captain he doesn't like and he thinks he's harsh and disorderly. And then that captain leaves, and then another guy comes on and he's very by the books. The problem is that old Humphrey Bogart, he's kind of insane. He's so by the books that he's gonna go crazy on the crew and impose harsh or insane discipline for the smallest infractions of dress code, at least make everyone's life totally miserable. He basically is mad, and Fred McMurray is like, we should do something about this. Let's complain to the captain, and our doe-eyed hero-ish guy, he's really just more of like an audience stand-in, is they want to go along, but Fred McMurray gets cold feet, and then so they've got all this stuff with the mad captain. Finally, the most sort of morally upright guy, who's not our doe-eyed protagonist, so there's Fred McMurray, there's the doe-eyed protagonist, and there's this other guy who's been on the ship a long time, and he's just your standard. He's kind of your stand-in for blue collar, I want to do the right thing sort of morality. And he's like, yeah, I'm convinced now. I've been the most loyal to the captain. I've been the most like, we can't rebel. We can't have a mutiny. We're going to have a mutiny. This is too dangerous. This guy almost got us killed in a storm. So we're going to mutiny. We're going to take over. And then, of course, the whole thing has to be tried by the Navy because a mutiny is serious. We could all be killed or court-martialed, whatever. Or is court-martialing just the thing that means that they bring you to court? Anyway, I obviously don't know my Navy terminology, but they have a big trial. And they find a lawyer this is like the last third of the movie, maybe or the last fourth even, I don't know. They find a lawyer who's willing to take the case. He takes it, and as he puts it, he torpedoes Captain Queeg, who's Humphrey Bogart. Because the defense is making Humphrey Bogart look like a rational, reasonable person. He rose to the rank of captain, so he's pretty good at that. But this guy just asks him questions until he falls apart and starts muttering in a madman kind of way, which he did on the ship all the time. And the defense is blown to pieces, and Humphrey Bogart's, the mutiny, they get away with the mutiny, basically. And then they all have this scene and Fred McMurray is this awful coward who wouldn't appear at the prosecution. He denied that anything was ever a problem because he's just a coward. Okay, all right. So then the movie's final scene, you're like, man, some of that was tense. Like the courtroom stuff was good. Humphrey Bogart was good. I don't know if I liked this movie, but that was some good. Those were some fun courtroom scenes, and I'm glad they got away with the mutiny or whatever because it was justified. And then, that the movie's not done with you, because the lawyer comes down to their little party they're having, and he's drunk and he's upset, and he throws champagne in Fred McMurray's face, and he says. Basically, he gives a speech to the audience, but he calls the characters to account for their evil behavior, which is that they did not love and support their captain, and if they had, he would not have been the awful madman that he was, and how dare they? And Fred McMurray is the real author of the Caine Mutiny because he planted seeds of suspicion, and then the other guys went along with it, and they betrayed their captain. He was asking for help. Didn't they know he was asking for help? Did they give him help when he asked? No, they didn't. They're the reason there's a Caine Mutiny. They should all feel ashamed of themselves, and so should you, audience. Blah, blah, blah. All right. I just think, what a nasty trick to play. So our job.
We're like codependence mutiny, the movie.
It's just like, this does not express a healthy relationship with authority. Like, if Jake goes insane.
If he goes insane, will be your fault of you. Yeah.
That's right. It will be my fault. And if Jake goes insane and does 10 things that are incredibly destructive to our church, but then he has this sit-down session like Humphrey Bogart where he's like, well, I just want to say if anyone has anything that they think is wrong, they could say it now. And I've been going through a hard time, and then no one says anything. That's the moment where we betrayed Jake and the church because we didn't respect authority. And if we'd been there for Jake at that moment, it would have been okay. So that's what the movie thinks. And I just think that is so mean. That is so stupid. What a dirty trick to play on your audience. Okay. That's all I have to say.
Stay with your abusive husband, the movie.
I mean, well, remember that one session after years of abuse that your husband sat down with you and he was all pathetic and broken like a little boy, and he was like, if you have anything you want to say to me, I've been having a hard time, it hasn't been easy, I know. Then you don't say anything. Well, there you just clearly showed that you're a rebellious wife. That's what the movie thinks.
That's like textbook. That's every abusive husband does that. You got to beat him with baseball bats. That's what
That's right. That's what the Rainmaker taught me.
Right.
Yeah. That's what the Rainmaker taught me. All right. You're either going to be Claire Danes or Fred McMurray. You pick which one.
That's not a good choice. Jake, what movie did you watch?
The only movie I can remember watching since the last time we recorded is The Meg 2, which
We've talked about this before, haven't we?
No, we talked about The Meg.
Well, I always like to say it has a scene where Jason Statham kicks a bad guy into the Meg's mouth and then says, "See you later, chum."
It does. That is the highlight and the high point of that movie. But I have to say, after the first one, it was a pretty big disappointment. It was not nearly as good as the first.
Was it not?
The Meg? No, the first Meg was way better than the Meg 2. And I just think the audiences should know, our audience should know, that if they
their fingers were all hovering over
if they appreciated the Meg, they might find themselves a little let down and disappointed by the Meg 2, in my opinion.
On a scale from Pascal to Kent, Jake, where would you rate? How far is the
full
Meg 2 down the slide? It's full Kant.
It's full Kant.
Oh, man. Oh, that's so bad. There's no justification.
Good trash is wonderful. And we should not excuse bad trash, because bad trash is terrible. You can have fun with bad trash.
I appreciated the campy, trashy. Maybe I was, I was in the right. I thought I was in the right mood for the Meg 2 at that point. It was a Friday night. It was just the boys. None of us had we'd been all over the place with baseball and stuff. None of us had any energy for anything with any level of sophistication. And the girls were all at soccer somewhere. And I was like, all right, this is our chance, because the girls keep vetoing Meg 2. Or whatever fun thing. Like, I don't care if it's a Godzilla movie, a Kong movie. I just don't care. Like, I want, if we're all here for campy, trash, fun, scary monsters eating people, and Jason Statham or somebody throwing out quippy lines.
Yeah.
Let's go. And we were all there for it. And it let us down. Like, it was just not fun. We really wanted it to be fun. But
we cannot excuse it. We cannot let people say, well, what did you expect from a Meg movie? There actually are expectations that come with the trash. The great critic Pauline Kael said, movies are so rarely great art that if we cannot appreciate good trash, then why would we go at all?
That's a really good line.
It is. And
it is a great line. And it's a great standard.
I don't mean everything has to be at the level of Raiders of the Lost Ark. I think there can be good trash that's legitimate, not immoral, but just, tropey and cliched and silly. And
in the first Meg, I thought actually did a really fun job of being tropey and cliched and silly. And it's like, here's the scene where we all are doing our stupid banter. And, you've heard all these things 1,000 times. This is straight out of a cartoon, or something like that. But it doesn't matter, because we're just here to see giant sharks, and have a couple of jump scares in here, and maybe have a moment of wonder or two as well. But and then we want to see at the end the shark let loose on the beach, and then Jason Statham blowing it to bits. That's what we want. And this one was just like, no, they did not put enough elbow grease into making it fun and compelling enough to stay with it. It was boring. The one thing that movie can't be is boring.
Well,
that line, even that line didn't hit in context, because you just weren't ready for it.
They didn't deliver it well.
Yeah, it wasn't well delivered. It wasn't well set up. It was a nice idea, but it was sort of like, oh man, we missed throwing this into our masterpiece of trash. We'll throw it into this one that we're throwing away and just taking free money on.
Well, alas, Meg 2 didn't live up.
That's it. That's only. I mean, we rewatched Swing Time. It's a great movie.
They dance.
Highly enjoyable.
They dance.
Super sweet.
They do a lot of dance.
I ended up rewatching Twisters. If I led anybody to believe that it was an actual good movie, I apologize. It is a trash movie, but it still has its fun set pieces. It's much more in the line of good trash than bad trash, but it sucks. So
I would say you just reminded me of some pretty decent trash I saw a while back.
Was that
not a family movie at all, but Operation Fortune with Jason Statham, Guy Ritchie's movie that never really got a proper release because it had Ukrainians as villains, and the Ukraine really. That's why. And then the war in Ukraine hit, and then so they don't have a nationality in this current iteration, I don't believe. But it's fun, it's slick, it's silly. It's Jason Statham kind of at some of his best in terms of Guy Ritchie knows how to make him look cool in an action scene. I mean, he is an actual athletic guy, and let him be as quippy or funny as he can. It's fun. It's just got a lot of crass sexual innuendo, joke, dialogue stuff that I don't enjoy very much.
Statham's great. I mean, if he had the studio system backing him that Schwarzenegger had or that Stallone had in the 80s, Statham is a genuine action star and a genuine athlete.
He is, and that's what
too bad that we don't make movies for him. Don't make them for Dwayne Johnson. Those guys are
this one.
Those guys can both get maybe.
Let's watch this one. It's a perfectly pleasant, fun kind of evening with your wife. It's clever. It's got Josh Hartnett being really great and funny, and Hugh Grant being really great and funny.
I'd rather watch that than an evening of ungentlemanly
warfare.
Dudes.
Yeah, of course, of course.
That is one movie that I keep thinking I'm going to watch this, and then it starts to autoplay a trailer, and then I think, nope, I am not going to watch this.
No,
this is going to be awful.
I don't want to see them murder me.
it.
I know I'm the Nazi, and I know that they're going to be gleeful in murdering me, and I just can't do it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how many other elements are fun.
Nope.
What is the one that we watched a couple months ago in that same vein? Oh, I know. It was Argyle. That sucked. I didn't want to watch it.
Oh yeah, Matthew Vaughn. I didn't want to see
Matthew Vaughn's
that.
the worst.
I didn't want to watch
Vaughn.
that movie. Why did we
Did
watch
someone
it?
pull a gun on you?
You know what it was? Is I had been in this, like, I was in that, like, I'm watching There Will Be Blood, and some of the, like, I had just watched No Country, and
That was like the last time we recorded this podcast.
yeah, probably, but I was still in that mode of these serious sort of like dark, serious Western type movies, and Amanda was awfully sick of all of that, and she's like, can it just be fun? Can whatever we watch have some fun to it? Like, it can have some violence, but can it be fun? And so I was like, you got to pick something, because I'm out. That's what she landed on. I was like, this is going to be awful, and it was.
I watched a couple scenes. I was like, man, this is not fun.
It wasn't. It wasn't fun.
I mean, Matthew Vaughn he's a sicko, and B,
A hack.
a hack. Yeah.
Everything about it's hack. I mean, Bryce Dallas Howard is an author, but actually the twist is she is Argyle. She is the
Man, she's another one. So talented, so beautiful. If she just existed in a world where an unscrupulous producer signed her to a 10-picture deal and then said, here's the scripts with 3-act structures, here's your love drama, here's your action movie, she'd be doing great.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, she gets to make her own career in the current crappy industry, and she has to build a stupid franchise with those Jurassic Park movies, which I want to be good trash, but are so bad that they're not good trash. I guess the first Jurassic World was kind of good trash, but
that's a movie I just don't even like.
Yeah, it's just not very likable.
no.
It's really not likable. It's decent quality, but man, I don't like it.
It's one of those things where suddenly you look back and you're like, the crap of your childhood. I know it's such a cliche, but it's like, I long for Stephen Sommers to come back and make The Mummy again or something like that. Like those movies that had like a man and a woman and 3 acts and a bad guy. And, they basically followed some screenwriting cliches, and the woman was pretty, and they fell in love, and like there were some special effects and some action, and man, I really missed that stuff.
Yep.
Oh,
well.
Oh, well. Let's be done. Next time, I'll talk about the biography of Ian Fleming.
Awesome.
That I've been reading.
That's pretty fun.
Which is pretty fun.
Maybe I'll talk about the Satanic Verses.
Cool.
That'll be less fun.
That won't talk
That
at
will
all.
be no fun.
Right. Ben won't. Well, he blew everything in this one episode. Put all his chips on the roulette wheel, and it's paying off in a great episode for you, the listener. Plus, if you subscribe at the right level on patreon.com/thebookening, you're getting a copy of The Pensies. You'll be able to read some great the Pensies.
The Pensies.
The Pensies.
The Pansies.
You won a Pensy. The Pensies. How do you
I
say
thought
it?
I was getting
Pensies.
Pascal's Pensies, but instead I got his Pansies.
His
and-
pansies, his
yeah.
posies.
Pascal's posies.
Pascal's posies. Oh my goodness.
My favorite Nathan trope.
What? The
Extended
extended as I try to decide whether the podcast's done. It's done. Goodbye.
Goodbye.